Yellow Productions presents
a travel guide for visiting the Singapore Botanical Gardens in Singapore. This is one of the most popular botanic gardens in the world. Actually, it's the most popular botanic garden in the world with over 4 million visitors annually. And this botanical garden, it's really big. In this video, I'll tell you everything you need to know to visit the botanical garden, including how to get here, what to see, and even where to eat, because Singapore's a foodie destination. Lots of this video is going to be me walking around talking about the garden, and I'll be walking because the garden is really big. It takes probably a couple hours to walk through the garden, but in a word, this garden is awesome. In 2 words, this garden is really awesome. It is Singapore's first UNESCO World Heritage Site. Definitely, if you come to Singapore, check it out. I know Gardens by the Bay is probably the most famous attraction, but the Singapore Botanical Gardens, really great way to visit nature and see all these plants. The Singapore Botanic Garden is about 150 years old. Actually, it predates the nation of Singapore and was established in the British colonial era. Singapore Botanical Gardens is credited for a lot of the world's rubber production. It's also credited for Singapore being a beautiful green city. A lot of the know-how on how to build plants and have Singapore be a tropical place came from here. And the #1 attraction is the Orchid Garden. Singapore is really famous for orchids, and they have the largest variety of orchids in a single garden here in Singapore.
I'll talk a little bit more about the Orchid Garden in just a moment, but first let's talk about how to get here.
To get to the Botanic Gardens, you can take the MRT to the Botanic Garden stop. It's on the downtown line and the Circle line. It brings you to this gate right here. So you walk in the main gate, pick up a handy map right here from this sign. So you can carry it along with you in this pamphlet. This is what the Botanic Gardens look like. Quite a big gardens, you can spend a lot of time. So now that you know how to get to the Botanical Gardens, let's talk about some of the things you should bring to be prepared when you come here. Singapore rains all the time. It rained when I was here. You should bring an umbrella. You should also bring sunscreen because Singapore is sunny. If you come in the evening, you should bring mosquito repellent because there can be a lot of mosquitoes, and bring a bottle of water because you might get thirsty, especially when it's hot. The main thing people come to see at the Singapore Botanical Gardens is the National Orchid Garden. This is the only attraction that has an admission fee. It's $5. It's well worth it to come inside. They have the world's largest display of orchids in one place. They also conveniently let you know where the photo spots are. I guess I can do video here too. And they've got a little seat you could sit in right down there if it was a nice day. Today it's not. My white shorts would probably get a little too dirty sitting on that rock. A tradition of Singapore is to give orchids to international dignitaries and visiting presidents of state who visit Singapore. There's the VIP Orchid Garden that has species of orchids that are named after various important visitors that visited Singapore. This orchid was named after Margaret Thatcher on her visit to the Orchid Garden. This one is named after the President of Mozambique. This orchid is named after Princess Masako of Japan. The most impressive collection of orchids here is in the Mist House. It's got the roof on top so that it keeps it cool. And this is where you'll see some of the most colorful and spectacular orchids in closest proximity. Of course, this is also where you'll find the most people, but the orchids are still pretty. Probably the coolest attraction here, pardon the pun, is the Cool House. You can go in here to beat the heat or beat the rain and see the orchids that don't like Singapore heat at all, but like it cold. Oh, I feel like I just walked into a supermarket refrigerator. This is really good. I'm gonna be in here for a while. It's misty too. Feels like a cool jungle. One part of the walkway in the Orchid Garden has a mirrored path, so you can take a selfie in the mirror while admiring the orchids. This is pretty cool, particularly for those of us that are really vain and need to be on camera all the time. Just beyond the Orchid Garden is the Ginger Garden. You'll find a little restaurant to eat right here, and you'll also find the provision store right here. They've got drinks, chips, and what I thought was funny, they now have nachos and cheese. Singapore Botanical Gardens is also a popular place for weddings. If you come on a Saturday or Sunday, chances are you'll see numerous private events. Well, that also means that some of the historical buildings, like here the Burkill Hall, will be closed off for those events. The garden, because it has big grassy open areas, is also a popular place for random weekend fun. I think they're doing a crab walk of some sort. At the center of the Botanical Gardens, you'll find the Visitor Center and the Nassim Gate. Just to the left over here is the gift shop. Really good place to go in if you want some air conditioning. And then just over here, there's the Casa Verde restaurant. But first I want to point out these trees. They've got these trees in these kind of waterfall planters, which I think are pretty neat. The Casa Verde restaurant, great place to go if you want to get out of the rain. They've got these tables that'll look out on the garden. You can get Western treats and Singaporean favorites. The first garden you'll pass if you're coming from the MRT is the Trellis Garden. The Trellis Garden showcases plants that climb, and they're on trellises. This one's in an arch, but as you walk through this arch and walk through this garden, you'll see they have lots of other climbing species on trellises too. The gardens is also quite well signed, so if you don't pick up a map, you can find your way by following the various signs throughout the garden. In addition to having good directional signs, they also have good signs to tell you about the various gardens. This is the Bougainvillea Garden, letting you know that the term bougainvillea came from the French explorer L.A. de Bougainville. What was kind of cool, in the Bougainvillea Garden, right back here, is a rooster. He was crowing quite a bit in my first take of this. Of course, now he's going to be super quiet, probably because I didn't pay him. Just beyond the Bougainvillea Garden is the Foliage Garden. This one has a nice wooden boardwalk that you can walk through. And they talk to you about these old school plants. Popular landscaping and houseplants. One of the things that's really cool about the Singapore Botanic Garden, and actually a lot of Singapore's public parks, is they make it very easy to have a casual stroll through nature without really being in nature. In the Foliage Garden, they've got this neat elevated metal trail right here so that you can walk kind of on top of the plants and on top of this pond that's back here. And all the time, your feet don't get dirty. This is a little better angle, but as you can see, the path is elevated above the aquatic plants. They can get wet underneath, but the sidewalk, they won't get wet. So this is pretty funny. As I'm walking down this path, I'm thinking, wow, this feels like walking through a rainforest, except one that has a sidewalk through it. And then I came across this sign right here that says that this part of the Botanical Garden is actually the rainforest. And lo and behold, this section, 6 hectares, is a tropical rainforest. Singapore is one of only 2 cities in the world that has a tropical rainforest inside of it. This one here, there's a second one in Singapore, and the second city that has a tropical rainforest is Rio de Janeiro. And of course, it's a perfect day because it's raining. And the neat part about being here in the rainforest, it's a little wet, but you can see the trees on top actually hold the rain away pretty well. And the wetness that's on my face, not rain, that's sweat. It is raining, but it's still really hot and humid. The Evolution Garden takes you through a nature walk through the evolution of the world. It begins with rocks, and then it goes into ferns, palm trees, and finally a rainforest section. One of the things that this garden does well, and good gardens of the world do, is take you through different zones. And as you walk through here, you definitely feel like you're in very different geographical places, even though you're just a few feet apart. For example, it's leafy and green behind me, but as I spin around this way, there's a kind of rocky cave and amphitheater behind me. At the beginning of the Evolution Garden, there are these trees of stone. They are large petrified trees that eventually turn into stone. They've used a couple of them here to make water fountains. Cool. Just above the Evolution Garden is the Red Brick Walk, so named because of the red bricks back there. And up here on this hill is the Healing Garden and the Fragrant Garden. The Healing Garden is one of the attractions that closes a little early. It closes at 7:30 p.m. and it's home to over 400 varieties of medicinal plants. If all those medicinal plants in the Healing Garden have got you hungry, check out the food canopy. It's just below the Healing Garden. It's like a mini hawker center. For a traditional Singaporean style breakfast that you can have in any hawker center, yes, any hawker center, because this is so popular, get kaya toast, coffee or tea. Kaya toast is a toast with kaya, and kaya is essentially coconut jam. It's essentially a Singaporean national dish, as Singaporean as pancakes are American. Well, it's cheap. You can usually get toast, coffee, and maybe a couple eggs to have with it for $2 or $3. How can you go wrong? Throughout the garden, you'll see the ceiling wax palm. It's got the unmistakable red trunk, and this is the logo of the Botanical Gardens. You'll find it planted throughout the gardens. Just past the visitor services is the second rainforest that's in the park. This is the bigger rainforest. So if you really want to experience what it's like to be in a rainforest, hop on over here. Again, they've got one of these neat elevated walkways. It's never been so easy to walk through a forest. Just adjacent to Symphony Lake is Palm Valley. There are over 800 palm trees planted here, and it's half of the known palm trees in the world. Throughout the park, they have a number of heritage trees with signs to tell you about them. This tree right here is a Timbesu tree, and it is estimated to be over 270 years old. These orchids back here, Vanda Miss Joaquim, are the first hybrid orchid that were ever made in Singapore back in 1893. One of the historical monuments is this 1930s bandstand. Bands used to perform here, they no longer do, but guess what? It's a popular spot for wedding pictures. A little bit after the bandstand, things at the gardens open up a bit. Here there's some big grassy open hills. There's a lake down there known as Swan Lake. From here it's about 300 meters to the Tanglin Gate, which is the closest to Orchard Road. There's also a restaurant down there called Food for Thought. And since I've been walking around these gardens for about 3 hours, I am hungry. I think I'm gonna go check that one out. On second thought, I decided not to do Food for Thought because that's Western food and that's not why I came to Singapore. But at the Tanglin Gate right here, it's just a 15-minute walk to Orchard Road, which is where many of the major hotels are in Singapore. There's 43 shopping malls there and lots of food that way as well. So if your travels take you to Singapore, then definitely check out the Singapore Botanical Garden to admire some plants and some beautiful orchids. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more like it every Sunday, then please subscribe, or you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Google+. Or you might enjoy watching one of these other videos from Singapore. Check them out, they're pretty neat.
This is a